Jagex finally released the date for the upcoming Trailblazer Reloaded League, and I finally made a video about it, something that people have been asking about for months now. Leagues are great, and according to some players, they're the single most fun thing they've ever participated in on Old School RuneScape. So, what are leagues? A league in Old School RuneScape is a temporary, short-term game mode with significantly boosted experience rates and powerful relics that unlock unique combat and skilling mechanics. Everybody starts from scratch as a regular Iron Man, and there is an extremely large set of tasks that the player is supposed to complete in order to progress in the game mode. At the end of the league, players will have earned league points, which will be transferred over to the permanent servers on whichever account you earn them on, and those points can be spent in the league store for some cool cosmetic rewards. The player can show these rewards off themselves, or sell them on the Grand Exchange to get a bit of monetary reward from their time spent playing the league. History of leagues. To date, there have been 3 leagues, with a 4th one set to release on November 15th. The first league was the Twisted League, which was released on November 14th, 2019, and ran for 9 weeks. For Twisted League, players were limited to Great Karend and the Kabos Lowlands. Everywhere else was totally inaccessible. There were a lot of tweaks that were made to make the game more enjoyable as a result of the area lock. Some of these changes included: all clue steps were modified such that they could be completed within Zeah. Certain equipment only accessible outside of Zeah was added to shops, such as Barbarian Fishing Rods, Anti-Dragon Shields, and Pestle and Mortar. Konar Slayer was updated such that she could give tests to players at level 5 combat, rather than level 75. Her area restriction was removed, and she also got a new task list unique to the League. Some mainland quests were auto-completed, but others weren't. For example, Druidic Ritual was completed, allowing access to the Herblore skill, but Lost City was not, so players could not use Dragon Longswords or Dragon Daggers. Some item drops were changed, so that the dependency on mainland regions could be removed. For example, Hydra Leather needs to be hammered in the Lithcrin Vault, which is not in Zeah, in order to make Ferocious Gloves. So instead of making the Hydra Leather a useless drop, they just replaced the Hydra Leather drop with a Ferocious Gloves drop instead. There are plenty more, but now you get the point. The main objective of the League, besides having tons of fun, was to complete as many tasks as possible during the 9 weeks. In total, there were 495 tasks broken into 5 categories of easy, medium, hard, elite, and master tasks. There were 88 easy tasks, 120 medium tasks, 87 hard tasks, 98 elite tasks, and 102 master tasks. Easy tasks rewarded 10 points, medium 50, hard 100, elite 250, and master 500. That means the maximum number of points achievable during the League was 91,080 points. An example of an easy task is completing the Queen of Thieves quest, and an example of a master task is completing Chambers of Xeric 1,000 times. Quite a large range of tasks and difficulty. Now, how would one realistically complete 1,000 Chambers of Xeric in 9 weeks? This is where the relics and unique combat mechanics come into play. Completing tasks rewards the player with league points. At a certain number of points, the player unlocks relics of various tiers. The Tier 1 relic was automatically unlocked at 0 points. Here, the player had the choice of saving 85% of their ranged ammo and runes, or unlimited run energy and quadrupled the health generation rate, or a passive Bone Crusher with 4 times experience, double the amount of ensouled hedge drops, and half the prayer drain rate. By far the most popular of these relics was the unlimited run energy one. The Tier 2 relic was unlocked at 400 points. Players had the choice between triple resource drops and 5 times faster farming growth, or all resources gathered being set to the bank, including Wintertoad crates, or the ability to choose which farming contract and Slayer task to take on. Tier 3 was unlocked at 1200 points, with the choices being double the experience in Artisan skills, or double the experience in Gatherer skills, or double the experience in combat skills. Tier 4 was unlocked at 2500 points. Players could choose between taking no damage at Wintertoad not interrupting actions, and triple loot from supply crates, or a 10% increase in accuracy and damage, increased to 30% if on a Slayer task, or a 1 in 10 chance of clue scrolls from monsters, clues obtained from skilling being 10 times more common, stackable clues, and clues always having the fewest steps to complete. The Tier 5 relic was unlocked at 5000 points, and included choices of attack speeds being sped up by 1 tick, or taking 50% less damage from all monsters and prayer restoring 1 point every 6 game ticks, or double the amount of experience from all skills. So, there are 5 relic tiers, with 3 choices in each tier, yielding 243 total unique paths that players could choose to go down depending on their playstyle. Now, whether or not these relics make it realistic to actually complete 1,000 chambers in 9 weeks, that's still debatable, but it's way more likely than in the main game. When the League ended, players were able to get their hands on a trophy, which is just a purely cosmetic item in the main game, depending on how many points they accumulated during the League. The trophies ranged from Bronze to Dragon, with dynamic point thresholds that weren't set until the League finished. The Dragon trophy could be acquired with 20,830 points, which was the threshold for the top 1% of players, Rune with 10,820 for the top 5%, Adamant for 5,270 for the top 20%, Mithril for 1,770, Steel for 510, Iron for 80, and Bronze for 10 points. The player could spend the acquired points in the League's reward shop for cosmetic items. The cosmetics available included 3 styles of the Twisted Relic Hunter outfit, the Twisted Banner, the Twisted Teleport Scroll, which is an override of the home teleport animation in the colors of the Twisted League, the Twisted Blueprints, which allows the player to change their house style to a Twisted League theme, and the Twisted Horns, which allowed the player to add a Twisted League theme to the Slayer helmet. To give you a super rough idea for how much money could be earned, at one point in the year following the Twisted League, the Twisted Blueprint sold for upwards of 28 million GP and cost 4,000 League points. So if a player finished in Dragon Tier and spent 20,000 points on 5 Twisted Blueprints, they could have made close to 150 million profit from playing in the League. Trailblazer League. Arguably the most popular league to date, Trailblazer League launched while everyone was still on lockdown on October 28th of 2020. It lasted 10 weeks and ended on January 6th, 2021. Legend has it that people were so upset that the servers closed on January 6th that they caused some sort of riot somewhere in the USA. This league was set in the mainland, and there's no possible way to get to Zaya. The main feature of Trailblazer League was completing tasks to unlock additional regions in the game. Everyone started out in Misthalin and also had access to Karamja off the jump. In order to get access to more areas, players had to complete tasks. The game was partitioned into 9 regions: Misthalin, Karamja, Tiranwin, Kandarin, Fremennik, Asgarnia, the Wilderness, Mauritania, and the Desert. However, players could only unlock up to 3 additional regions for 5 total regions, including Misthalin and Karamja. Obviously, this means that you could not unlock the entire map, so you better pick your regions carefully. Players could unlock their first additional region after completing 60 tasks, their second area after completing 140 tasks, and their third area after completing 300 tasks. Since this was based on tasks completed and not points, all tasks counted evenly, meaning an easy task was worth just as much as a master task when it came to unlocking additional areas. Trailblazer built upon a lot of what Twisted Leagues laid the foundation for. There were still tiers of powerful relics as you earn league points, but this time there were 6 tiers of relics instead of 5. And certain skills and content that would otherwise be impossible without items from other regions were still made available in all regions. Once again, players played as Iron Men, started off with a 5x experience rate buff, and were given level 3 Herblore, 5 Runecraft, and 10 Agility to ensure they could train the skills regardless of the regions they selected. However, perhaps one of the biggest additions to Trailblazer was the addition of passive relic effects. Similar to Twisted League, players still must choose which buff they want from 3 options at each relic tier. However, on top of the selected buff, players automatically receive another passive buff at each tier. Let's dive into the relics. The Tier 1 relic was automatically unlocked, requiring 0 points. Tier 1 provided buffs to skilling. The passive effect of this tier made it such that your run energy never depletes, so you could consistently be running. The relic choices for Tier 1 were a choice between gathering twice as many resources as normal, and effectively double the experience, as well as those gathered resources going directly to your bank. Or you could be able to process all of your items at once when performing production activities such as fletching bows or smithing bars, or a permanent plus 12 boost to all non-combat skills. At Tier 2, that relic was unlocked at 500 league points. The passive effect here increased the base experience rate from 5 times to 8 times, and the choices were between having the ability to teleport to any fairy ring or spirit tree from anywhere, or receiving certain teleportation jewelry and never losing charges when using jewelry and other consumables for teleportation, or being able to teleport right back to the last place you teleported from, outside of instances. The Tier 3 relic was unlocked at 2,000 league points and provided a passive effect of making certain drops twice as common. This was the first relic that provided combat buffs. The options were between a ranged relic, a melee relic, and a mage relic. The ranged relic halved the attack speed of all ranged weapons, increased damage by 10% and accuracy by 100% against monsters, and saved 90% of all ranged ammunition. The melee relic similarly halved the attack speed of all melee weapons, made melee attacks 25% more accurate, reduced incoming damage by 15%, and regenerated health at 4 times the normal rate. The magic relic, once again, halved the attack speed of all magic attacks, gave magic attacks 125% increased accuracy, and if you had a positive 60 magic attack accuracy, spells that bind or freeze your target have 100% accuracy, as well as also saving 90% of your runes. It's quite a big choice to make at that tier. The Tier 4 relic was unlocked at 4,000 points and provided a passive effect of increasing the experience rate from 8 times to 12 times. During the League, there were supposed to be 3 relics available to choose from at this tier. However, one of them was not implemented because it was buggy and unable to be resolved in time for the League. This relic choice that would have been available would have given the player an item that acted effectively as a second inventory that they could use from anywhere. So while this was not included in Trailblazer League, I think it's worth noting as it might be something that Jagex explores as part of an upcoming League, like we have happening in a couple weeks. So the 2 choices that were actually made available at this tier were centered around Clue Scrolls and Slayer. The Clue Scroll choice resulted in having enemies drop clues at a rate of 1 in 20. Clues from skilling were made 10 times more common. Clues were stackable, and clues always required the minimum number of steps. The Slayer choice resulted in players being able to choose which monster they wanted to kill on a Slayer task. Superior Slayer monsters would also spawn at a 1 in 25 rate. They would also always drop a clue scroll, as well as twice the amount of regular loot. The Tier 5 relic was unlocked at 7,500 points and provided a passive effect of making certain drops be 3 times as common. The choices here were between having crops grow 5 times quicker, twice as many crops gathered, all potions being made as 4 dose rather than 3, a 95% chance to save secondary ingredients and potions, and boosted stats never draining. Or, you could get a set of tools that automatically burns logs, smelts ores, and cooks food when you gather them. Or, anytime you gain experience, you gain additional experience in whatever skills you gained experience in, at a rate of 10% of your total level. The 6th and final relic was unlocked at 15,000 points and provided a passive effect of increasing the experience rate from 12 times to 16 times. All relics gave a 10% increase to accuracy and damage. The first relic offered a 50% chance of restoring hit points and prayer by 10% of the damage you did. The second effectively made every attack have a barrage or Chinchompa-like effect, hitting multiple targets at once, assuming you're in multi-combat. And the third made special attack regenerate 3 times faster, as well as making all special attacks cost no more than 20% of your special. The main goal of Trailblazer League was still to gain as many league points as possible. The amount of points available to earn differed based on the region selected, as each individual region had a different number of tasks available to complete. Theoretically, the highest number of points achievable during the League would have resulted from completing tasks in the Wilderness, Mauritania, and Kandarin. The theoretical cap was 79,580 points. Trailblazer League had some rewards that were similar to Twisted League, and some other unique rewards were also added. Players still earned untradeable trophies at the end of the League, although with a slightly different appearance than the trophies earned from Twisted League. The percentage thresholds for the various trophies was the same as Twisted League, but the point values that those percentages corresponded to was different. This time, to be in the Dragon tier, you needed 56,310 points, in the Rune tier, 35,680 points, Adamant 18,720, Mithril 6,480, Steel 2,000, Iron 510, and Bronze 100. The rewards available after Trailblazer League included a recolor of the Graceful outfit, 3 tiers of the Trailblazer Relic Hunter outfit, the Trailblazer Rug for the player-owned house, an ornament kit for Dragon Tools, the Trailblazer Globe statue for the player-owned house, a Trailblazer-themed banner, and a Trailblazer home teleport animation. Shattered Relics League. Shattered Relics League had big shoes to fill given the massive success of Trailblazer League. It was the third and most recent league, and its reception was mixed right from the jump. It was initially planned to be released in early November of 2021, however, there was a controversial decision to delay the start of the league until January 19th, 2022, over 2 months, due to Jagex releasing Group Iron Man mode on October 6th and wanting to give content creators more time to enjoy that new game mode before releasing another game mode. Doesn't really make sense, but whatever. The league ran for 8 weeks, from January 19th, 2022 until March 16th of 2022. It was originally set to end on March 2nd, but got extended 2 weeks due to popular demand. In this league, there was no area restriction. Players had access to the entire map. Instead of areas being restricted, skills and bosses were restricted instead. A new type of currency called Sage's Renown was added to this league. Similar to league points, Sage's Renown was unlocked by completing tasks, and it was required for unlocking skills and bosses. This Sage's Renown could also be used to autocomplete certain quest storylines. The relics in this league were much weaker in comparison to the previous leagues. In fact, the relics were shattered into fragments, hence the name Shattered Relics. These fragments individually were much weaker than the relics of previous leagues, but the fragments could be mixed and matched on the fly, allowing the player for a more customizable but overall less overpowered style of play during the league. Similar to previous leagues, players had to complete tasks to progress through tiers. At each tier, players unlocked an additional fragment slot, with 7 tiers in total. So, Players could have up to 7 active fragments at any given time, and they could change which 7 fragments were active anytime they wanted to while at a bank. So how did players unlock fragments? Mostly through RNG. This is a medieval point-and-click RNG simulator after all. Completing clues, killing bosses, and even simple skilling were all ways to collect fragments. If skilling, performing actions that reward more experience had a higher chance of rewarding the player with a fragment. Combat fragments had slightly different mechanics than the rest of the fragments. They are broken up into 4 tiers corresponding to their strength. Tier 1 fragments were dropped by pretty basic enemies, but Tier 4 fragments were only dropped by challenging content such as raid bosses, God Wars dungeon bosses, fight caves, and the Inferno. These fragments were weaker than the traditional relics, but each fragment contained a single main effect and multiple set effects. Fragments could also be leveled up by gaining experience while they were active. Leveling up the fragments made them more powerful. The main effects were active with a single fragment. Let's take a look at the Alchemaniac fragment. The main effect of this fragment was increasing the amount of coins when high alching items. At fragment tier 1, this provided 15% more coins, at tier 2, 30%, tier 3, 50% more. For the same fragment, the 2 passive effects were Endless Knowledge, which, if the player had 3 active fragments with this passive effect, would allow the player to switch spellbooks anywhere, and Personal Banker, which gave the player a chance to directly bank their resources harvested from certain skilling activities. With 2 active relics with this set effect, there is a 50% chance of direct deposit, and with 3, it was a 100% chance. There is an extremely large set of individual fragments as well as set effects, which made the game highly customizable, but also was a point of contention for a lot of players. And since there were so many, I'm not going to go into details in my audio, but I'll scroll through them on the screen if you want to see them. I'll also post a link in the description to the wiki page for further reading if you want. Some players absolutely loved how much you could change things up depending on the activity you were doing. However, others found the customization and constant changing of fragments to be too tedious, and they felt they were spending more time in the fragment interface than actually playing the game. I personally was in that camp. It was very burdensome, constantly changing fragments, and more often than not, I spent so much time in that damn interface that I got frustrated and didn't feel like playing. I think part of the beauty of the previous leagues was that once you picked your path, you were on it for the rest of the league, and you didn't have to constantly be switching your relics or anything like that. Once again, players earned trophies for their participation in the league. The point thresholds here were similar to the point thresholds for Trailblazer. 52,545 points for Dragon, 31,980 points for Rune, 15,575 for Adamant, 5,475 for Mithril, 1,660 for Steel, 480 for Iron, and 100 for Bronze. For rewards that could be purchased with league points, similar to previous leagues, there were 3 tiers of cosmetic outfits, a Shattered Relics home teleport animation, and a league banner. Additional, more unique rewards were also added, consisting of a weapon variety pack, which was an ornament kit for the Abyssal Whip, Tentacle Whip, Rune Crossbow, and God Books, the Dwarven Multi-Cannon ornament kit, which was a cosmetic override for the multi-cannon, and cosmetic overrides for the Void Knight and Mystic Armor sets. Overall, I think the rewards from this one were the coolest, but the gameplay was the most lackluster and hopefully something Jagex steers away from in future leagues. Trailblazer Reloaded. As the name seems to imply, the 4th and upcoming league is going to be a modification of the most successful league so far, which was the second league, Trailblazer League. The league is expected to release on November 15th, 2023, which is probably going to be 2 weeks after this video goes live. It's going to run for 8 weeks and close on January 10th, 2024. Can you believe it's almost 2024? Where the hell has the time gone? Jagex has been pretty stingy when it comes to releasing information about Trailblazer Reloaded. I suspect that in the next few days after this video goes out, they'll start drip feeding us tidbits of information that will make us all lose our collective shit, and that's going to be awesome. However, we have already been given some information ahead of time. What we know so far is that since this is still a form of Trailblazer, the player will still have all regions locked at the start except for Misthalin and Karamja, and completion of tasks and earning league points will unlock new regions and relics. Players will also still only be able to unlock 3 additional regions, for a total of 5. However, there are a handful of significant items that will cause this iteration of Trailblazer League to be drastically different than the original Trailblazer League. First and foremost, the game has changed a hell of a lot in the past 3 years, so there's 3 years worth of updates in the game now that didn't exist back then. There's so many things, so I probably won't be able to cover exactly everything, but that list includes skill revamps, such as Forestry, new minigames like Guardians of the Rift, Temporos, and the Giant's Foundry, a whole new freaking raid in Tombs of a Mascot, a more challenging version of another raid in Hard Mode Theater of Blood, combat achievements, new bosses in Nex and the Phantom Muspa, as well as reworked Wilderness bosses, New equipment such as the Osmumpton Sang, Tumikin Shadow, Lightbearer Ring, Bofa, Zarite Crossbow, Zarite Van Braces, Voidwaker, Torva Armor, Venator Bow, Altar, Magus, Bellator, and Venator Rings, and the Soul Reaper Axe. New quests such as Secret of the North, Desert Treasure 2, and A Kingdom Divided, which introduces thralls to the mix. All of this new content alone should make this a totally different experience than the last time, but that's not all that's different. This time around, players have an extra region to pick from. Previously, Zaya was inaccessible, but not this time. The region of Kuran and Kabos is available, and that region has changed significantly since Twisted League. This league also has 7 relic tiers available, compared to original Trailblazer's 6 relic tiers. The task list is also going to be different, so you won't necessarily be working towards the same things you worked towards last time. And for the first time in League's history, the rank thresholds for different tiers of trophies will be static, rather than dynamic based on the other players. Unfortunately, the thresholds haven't been released yet, and obviously there will be additional rewards in the Trailblazer Reloaded theme that look pretty cool. Similar to all the other leagues, there will be a banner, home teleport animation, and outfits corresponding to the league's theme. There will also be new death and respawn animations, new alchemy and vengeance animations, a cosmetic override for the blowpipe, and a cosmetic override for rejuvenation pools inside player-owned houses. I am absolutely pumped for this league to come out. Leagues are my favorite thing in Old School RuneScape. I think they add such a fun sense of adventure and really level playing field for the first few days, which hits me right in the nostalgia. I also really love the totally random crap you see people wearing, and how it's not just players running around in full graceful all the time. Everyone looks like a cute noob, and the majority of us are cute noobs when it comes to playing in the leagues. So, that just about summarizes the 3 previous leagues and gives an intro into the upcoming league. If you found this video enjoyable, I'd gladly appreciate a thumbs up, comment, or a subscription. This video took me way longer to make than I anticipated, but I'd love to continue making videos for the community that are more than just me reading blog posts, which the devs seem to be taking over anyway. So feel free to drop your plans, questions, or speculation about the upcoming league below in the comments. If you'd like to hear my plans, let me know, and I'll make another video detailing my plans for the league. As always, thank you very much for tuning in. Hope to see each and every one of you out there running around like a kid again in Lumbridge on November 15th.